we didn't find out then and there. So she collided into another car.
Wow.
So pretty much people would think that it's a car accident. It actually wasn't until years later, and I think that's when I had my own mental health problems, is that I actually got told that it was suicide, and our whole family knew, but besides us kids.
Welcome back to the Open Up Podcast, everyone, to episode 103 with Brooke Blurton, youth worker, mental health advocate. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Just so people know, Brooke had to do her makeup because she just come from the beach.
Yeah, I was honestly didn't expect it. I was like, one of those days where you're so lazy. Nah, it's fine. I put in a bit of effort for you, look.
First question straight off the bat, a bit of a deep one. Could you please describe the way that you view yourself as a woman and or human?
How I view myself? I feel like I'm quite small, but I'm pretty strong. I think I view myself as quite a small, fierce woman who's super passionate about life.
Yes, I love that, because my daughter yesterday was singing and dancing to Beyonce while it was on the TV.
Yeah.
And all we could hear her saying was, "Who run the world, girls."
Exactly. That is me. That's like my alter ego, Beyonce.
Yes.
Or Cardi B on one of those, like...
Cardi B.
Yeah, one of those... What would you call it? I don't know. It's one of those takes.
All right, so I think your story that you're going to share happens at about... Well, the first one that you're going to share happens at about 11 years old. Could you give us like a breakdown or a summary of your childhood up until that point?
Yeah. So I grew up in Carnarvon, and it's a bit of a country town north of Perth. So not a lot of people, not a huge population. But the percentage of the population is Aboriginal, so quite cultural. I'd say, I was really heavily involved in my culture. Throughout my childhood, we moved around quite a bit though. So I didn't just stay in Carnarvon. I moved around, like we came down to Perth. I went up to even Karratha, Port Hedland, Wickham. Missed out on a huge amount of school. So I was always kind of the new girl. And missing out on school, I was kind of a little bit more behind than some students. So I pretty much struggled, I guess, in primary school a little bit. My mum was heavily addicted to drugs, and I think that's part of the reason why we moved around, just unstable housing and all that sort of jazz. So yeah, up to my childhood, I really enjoyed though living in Carnarvon, like a country town, because we didn't have iPads or computers or any of that stuff, so you could kind of use the backyard, it was like, use your imagination, be creative. So I love that bit about country town, and half of it I also lived on a plantation, so we grew our own produce and fruit, and so that was really cool. That was really insightful, I guess, because when my mum was good, when she was off the drugs, she had a job and that's what she did, and then she'd get really bad, she'd lose her job, and then we'd move, and it was a bit of a cycle. But the good bits living on the plantation were fun. Like, you get to ride on these tractors, and we would pick fruit for a bit of pocket money and, go down to the local deli and spend it on lollies. Nothing like productive or valuable in any way. But, and then at 11, my grandma actually had a stroke in the backyard, and she didn't quite recover from it. But whilst my grandma was actually sick, my mum suicided and took her own life. I was only 11, so my brother had a younger brother who was 8 and a younger brother who was just 3.
Wow.
So, and I kind of had this like caring role in the family. So when we found out my mum had took her own life, my automatic role was to sort of bring them all together and make sure that they were okay. And then, I unfortunately moved away and had to move away from my family. My dad's actually lives in Perth, and I said to him, like, Mum's passed. He didn't actually come to the funeral, but he was, I'll come get you. So he actually got me, but he could only take me, unfortunately, because he's not the father to my younger brothers. And I moved away from my family and had to start like a full new life in Perth, new school, new friends. I was new city, like Perth's a city classified as like a big city, even though it's not big on scale to everywhere else. But that was pretty overwhelming. I think when I think back to that time, I had no idea what the hell was going on. And then a month into my new life, I'd say, my nana passed away. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of loss in like a short amount of time.
That's a very compressed version. If you unpack it all, like a lot had happened in that like couple of months of space of time. Like I honestly just don't even know how I got through it as an 11-year-old. I think you don't have that maturity to actually process it properly. I think you're just kind of in shock, or you're in like robotic mode, whatever you want to call it.
Looking back now, like hindsight's a beautiful thing. It's always 2020. Do you have an understanding of what you were thinking at the time? Because a lot of kids that they would view that, and a lot of the kids or the people that I've spoken to have lost parents end up taking on beliefs that they're not enough, and that's why their parents didn't stay around. Do you have an idea of how it impacted you?
Do you know what's really, in my circumstances, a bit unusual? Because when my mum actually took her own life, it's funny, it was not funny, but we didn't find out then and there. So she collided into another car.
Wow.
So pretty much people would think that it's a car accident. It actually wasn't until years later, and I think that's when I had my own mental health problems, is that I actually got told that it was suicide, and our whole family knew, but besides us kids. Yeah, so that was hard. That was because I had sort of had this, idea that, Mum died in an accident, that, God must have taken her. It was time for her to go, or it was it was an accident, so it was no control. That that's my mentality at that time. I'm an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and then it wasn't until I actually had left school that I'd found out the truth. And that was like, then those confusing feelings come, the resentment, the anger, the hurt, because it's like, well, you purposely left us. And all that sort of pain that I had to go through at that time, thinking like not blaming anyone, but, kind of, and I wasn't very spiritual or religious, but I was like, well, I blame God because he took her away. And then realising that, no, well, my mum chose that, and that was her path that she wanted to take. And that was, that kind of was like a spiral down for me.
So where did you go from there?
Finding out, I did a ring around, and I was upset. A grandmother. Now it sounds super religious. People go like... a woman that had been kind of like a grandmother in our life, and she had told me that my mum chose to do it and she had a plan, and I didn't understand or could really process what that meant at that time, but I just honestly just kept thinking like, so she left us kids. That was my feeling, like that feeling of like, she has 5 beautiful children and she left all of us, even the youngest being 3.
Yeah.
And that played over and over in my head for, I'd say, honestly, like a year. And then when I was 19, I was at uni, and I remember a lot of things were happening in my life. I'd moved out of home when I was 15. I actually got kicked out of home when I was 15 by my dad. So I was kind of an independent minor for about 4 years, obviously just I actually, had to complete year 11 and 12 as an independent minor, like I had to do it all myself. And then leaving school, like finally actually graduating, that was a huge thing for me. Like I was like, wow, I can't believe I've done this on my own, really, like partially. You know, I don't have mum, I don't have really dad. I was like a huge thing. But still felt so alone. Like even in that like empowerment stage, I still felt so alone. And going through that, I started, you know, things were happening. I was in a car accident, crashed my car. I was having money problems. I had to work to basically, you know, support myself at home. But then I was missing out on uni, so I was failing because I was trying to fund myself to go on a state trip to play footy because I love footy. Like there was just so much happening and I could unpack. And I kind of just like got to it. I was like, well, life is not for me. I was like, kind of got to an end where I was like, well, no one cares about me. No one loves me. Like I'm doing this all my own. And, you know, and I kind of had this feeling of like, I'm going to give up. And I had a few attempts, none that people knew about, and scared the shit out of me. I was in a pretty dark place. And then there was this one time where I had a boyfriend at the time, and I said to him, like, I'm not feeling well, and I went for a walk. I wasn't contactable. And I remember sitting on the train tracks like that, this stuff that like brings up so much pain for me. But yeah, I remember sitting on the train tracks, like the next train that comes, like, fuck it. Sorry if you can't swear. I was just like, nah, I'm done.
I can understand that, like considering what you had to go through and finding out that your mum had a plan and like chose to do it. It's hard to hear, especially if you went through the grief of losing her and then that resentment towards some sort of higher being for taking her away, and then knowing that like led to you being split up from your brothers and then having to lose your grandmother not too long after. That's a lot to go through.
Yeah, it just kind of like felt like I'd lost like absolutely every avenue for that, like culture, family, my mum, my nan. Like I was really close to my nana, and I was close to my mum, like, but my mum and I were like too alike that we just clashed. And people say to me now, like, you're so like her, like, and I hate that, but I also love it because I feel like, you know, my mannerisms are the same as her, but I feel like I've made much better choices and for my life and the way that I think she probably would have, but she just got wrapped up in the wrong stuff, you know. So yeah, so it was really hard. Losing my nana was probably the worst. Like, I think we kind of said our final goodbyes before Mum passed away, and that was a shock for us. But then it kind of just like happened, like bang, 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 like, and then nothing. I just moved in, like, you know, moved in with my dad, which has got an English background, so I was moved in with a white family. I had no idea about. They had no idea about my culture. They didn't understand me. I was kind of like the black sheep in the family, and even though I'm not like super black or, you know, but in the inside, like, that's how I grew up, so... Yeah.
Do you feel like you fit in?
No. I remember, like, my dad just kind of I had this, like, weird relationship with my dad. I kind of had this ego that I didn't need him. And I hate to say that, and I still have that ego now, because I kind of got to a point where I didn't need my dad. And it sucks for him, but the thing is, he didn't really try to be my dad. Like, dad is like nurturing. Like, you're a dad, like, you love them, nurture them, and like your role as a dad is to protect, you know, and you want to protect them as much as you can. I just feel like my dad didn't really protect me from anything. He really kind of just left me out to the sharks. I don't know how to say that. yeah.
So sort of like taking you on because he had to rather than because he genuinely wanted to. Yeah. That's a hard position to be in, like having lost your mum and your grandma, being taken away from your brothers and then going to a family where you don't fit into someone who you don't feel genuinely wants you,
Yeah.
you're not going to feel loved at all. So how can you love yourself?
That's exactly it. And I think when I trying to reflect back now, I sort of think I felt like an outcast. And it's really, I spoke about this just recently, that for 2 years, actually, when I moved to Perth, I was mute. I actually didn't talk.
Well.
Yeah, if people spoke to me, I'd respond and I'd talk to them. And it's funny because I can't stop talking now. But back then, I couldn't communicate what I wanted to say in words. And because I was so behind in schooling and learning, I actually was just articulate. I couldn't articulate what I was trying to say. And I remember my dad and my stepmom getting actually really frustrated with me, and like that added to the feeling of not being wanted because it wasn't good enough and I wasn't smart enough. You know, honestly, like I can't even imagine how I even got through that time. Like having those feelings now, like it makes me angry, like thinking you made me feel like that, but you know, I was just a little kid. I was just trying to get, just trying to learn how to be a kid again.
So I can understand how you got to that point where you want to take your life. Like if you feel like you're not good enough, you feel like you're dumb, you're not good enough for the people at school, you're mute, not putting yourself in a position to, I guess, put yourself out there and possibly face not fitting in again. Mm. That's a tough position to be in, and that's some of the reason, probably one of the biggest reasons for people taking their life is because they feel alone or misunderstood. So I totally understand how you got to that point.
Mm. Yeah. Honestly, like I thought, but I think, you know what, it's a dark place, that is. Like I think that was part of me that was rock bottom, and I think now I always like to see things in like a much more shinier and brighter way, because I think that I saw that as my rock bottom, and I don't ever want to go back to how I was feeling and how I felt about myself. Like I just can't think. I was so angry at myself, and it's so easy to blame everything.
Yeah.
But when you blame yourself, like that's hard. Like it's like even hard. Yeah. See, now I'm getting like emotional about it because that pain is like still doesn't sit well with me. Like it's like, can't believe how bad you felt about yourself to even think about that.
That's an important point though, and that's powerful because if you feel that way about yourself, no matter how much you try and please everyone around you, no matter how proud they are of you, if you feel that way about yourself, no one else's opinion is going to matter. Yeah,
no. Actually, and it's so, like, even then, when I was talking about that dark time and before I had sort of even got to that, I was thinking, how did I get to that? Like, what was the pivotal moment of, like, where I was like, well, this is my decision, or, you know, when I decided to do that. And I think, wow, it was actually so petty, but I got dropped from a grand final team in Melbourne for I was playing state footy. But I think there's so much under that kind of like snapped me, like, if that makes sense. Like, because I had a car accident and I was already like so stressed out about money and like living out of home, and then, you know, like failing uni, like when I got dropped from this like state team. It sounds so petty saying it out loud, but I was thinking about it. Like I think about it all the time. But that was just kind of like saying you're not good enough. Like, and that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, because there had been a sequence of events that I was like, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And it just kept going. And then that was like, nah, obviously you're saying to me, like, and it's a hard thing as you're like a 19-year-old girl, like trying to make it in footy. Like, yeah, you're not good enough. Okay, great. Cut me from the grand final. Sweet. And then, I'd saved up so much money to go to that trip in Melbourne, and my dad was supposed to be there. He was living there, and, he said, he'll make the time to come to the game. Didn't. So that was that level of disappointment and just, a huge cycle of, so much trauma and abuse, just kind of yeah.
Wow. Did you have anyone you could speak to about any of that?
I did, but it was this huge barrier of talking to them, as if, again, I feel a bit ashamed because it's so petty and but there's that shame that I couldn't talk to them about it because they wouldn't see it in the same eyes as I do, if that makes sense. I actually had, I was dating a guy and we had a very toxic relationship throughout that whole process as well. So he didn't understand me. I felt like I could talk to him, but he wouldn't understand to the depth that I probably wanted him to. And I had a teacher that took me in as a 15-year-old because I was homeless and helped me. Yeah, she actually helped me get through year 11 and 12. Without her, I honestly would have been homeless. I don't even know where I would be till now. And because she was like, I'm not going to let you fail. I'm not going to let you drop out. And she's the one person that I could probably trust. And even she was freaked out. She didn't know what to do when I was suffering from depression.
So where do you go from that point if that's your rock bottom?
I don't know where I went. I know when all that happened and I had these attempts without people's no knowledge of people around, and there was something in me saying this is not the life that you should be living, and I was kind of ignoring that. I think because I was obviously just such in a dark place, and there was so much pain, and there was part of me that was I seem like emotional. I think there was a part of me that was just I want my mum,
Yeah.
It's it was sad.
Was there any, knowing that you held resentment towards a higher being for taking your mum, when you thought that was the case, up until you were told otherwise, was there any resentment towards yourself because you were taking the same path as your mum, knowing how much that had hurt you?
I honestly, because there probably should have been, but I honestly just had this thought that no one cared. No one cares about you, or no one wants you around, no one's reaching out to you. I was writing pretty cryptic statuses on Facebook, and no one, there'd be a couple of people that would understand that level of pain that I was kind of, that was a bit of not a cry for help, because I wouldn't say that but it was kind of my level, my reaching out, but not a huge response. And it's not a tension thing, maybe there was a level of attention to, hey, I'm really hurting, I need help, but not a cry for attention. It was just, do you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm talking.
To be honest, I went through this with my niece, her going through something similar, and her behaviour I felt was attention seeking, a cry for attention. But looking back now, and after everything that she's been through, hindsight is beautiful, because I could see that she was just hurting, and that's the only way she felt comfortable expressing herself or asking for help. So the same thing with you.
you find these little, like, avenues or, like, I don't know. Because it's so, I think there's this, like, even now, working in mental health, like, I know how hard it is just to reach out because I had that problem. Like, I couldn't just say, I'm not feeling well, I need help. Because it was just, like, this, like, level of weakness or I was being petty. This is my thing. Like, I feel like I'm being petty, you know, because people used to look at me and, like, think that even as an 18, 19-year-old, like, I had it all. Like, I was good at footy, I was sport, I was athletic, I was smart, but I had to work hard for those things. Like, it didn't come easy. I wasn't smart in primary school and high school. I had to do a lot of catching up. I dropped, you know, I was homeless. Like, year 11 and 12 was the hardest years of my life. And just to even graduate, like, be one of the first in my high school, that was a huge thing for me, but it wasn't celebrated because I didn't have any family around, you know, like there was hardly anyone at my graduation. I felt embarrassed and I was even, you know, I just felt like no one cared about old Brooke.
Yeah.
You know, they were just, and she's got everything. She's smart, like, you're like, you know, being a young, pretty girl, like, you don't have any problems apparently. Like, no, that's the stereotype. That's, you know, that's...
Knowing that you, like, your dad was supposed to show up to that footy tournament or that grand final in Melbourne, and then you being dropped, and then him not showing up. Did you ever feel at any point that you were good enough for your dad?
I still don't now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I still don't now, but I know that it's my dad's issue.
Yeah. And
it's not mine. And this is taking a lot of therapy and a lot of sessions and a lot of sitting in the chair crying because that feeling, not good enough. I won't be good enough for him because, well, really, I had this feeling that he didn't want me. So I personally had to accept, like, I don't have to seek out his acceptance.
Yeah.
Because I have to actually move on with my life. And that was just like holding on to so many these other feelings of not being good enough. I held on to the same one of not being good enough for my dad. So yeah, I had to learn to let go of that. And it still hurts, like it's still painful because everyone wants their dad in their life. Even if, you know, my dad's alive, like it feels like I don't even have a mum or dad. And that's hard to say, but yeah, for sure.
So at what point does your life sort of start to turn around and you start taking steps to recover or overcome some of the trauma that you've been through?
I think it's been... I think because when I hit rock bottom at that time, I think I had a huge reflective. I looked myself once in a mirror and I just cried because I didn't like the way that I looked. I didn't like the way that I was feeling. I don't look at myself like that anymore. And I think it's been a huge journey. Like, I've been through numerous psychologists. You know, people don't know this about me, but, you know, I don't connect well with people. I can connect, you know, on a face value level, but emotionally and, you know, I couldn't connect with anyone, especially psychologists. So I think from 20, and I'm only 24 now, like the last 4 years has been a huge self-discovery journey. And I think I learned at a young age that I had a responsibility as an older sister, and that's probably what's influenced my hugest, because my oldest brother, he's embarrassed, but he's, you know, he holds a lot of shame about his mental health.
Yeah.
And I think me talking about it, me being involved with mental health, and it actually, I think it's starting to help him. And that's sort of my motivation with these things, you know, like he, I don't want to get the phone call that he's like taking his own life. So
That's
he's
powerful.
yeah.
Heart-centered mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How did you give yourself permission as someone who had hit that rock bottom, who felt like they weren't good enough, who felt alone, who just wanted their mum? How did you give yourself permission to go and see a health professional, a psychologist? Because that's scary for a lot of people.
Oh, hell yeah. It is so scary. I think... I don't know if I gave myself permission or if I just said to myself, you do this or you don't, in a way. Like, I don't know if that's the same thing. But I realised that I have this little quote that I live by. Sorry. I think life is for you and it's not against you. And even though everything was happening against me, in a way, I was realising that it was actually shaping me and moulding me into the person that I am. And when I started working and telling my story, that actually gave me like huge power, I think, because I could see once when I told my story, I was actually working. I was 20 and I was working at a mental health youth service.
Wow.
And it was just an admin job, right? And I, had to pick myself up from the dark times. And this job came along and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for it, but I did it. I took an opportunity, and I'm a very opportunist person. I just, even though with every crack that has happened, I take an opportunity, whether I learn from it or I don't like it. Yeah. You either learn from it or you don't. And I took this job and I was telling my story once in front of 50 people at my workplace. And I think looking around the room and seeing everyone's faces and seeing that they were so, just captivated by it. And so afterwards I had so much positive response that they're like, you're so courageous, you're telling a story and you're saying it with true emotion, that takes a lot of courage. And I found this kind of power in letting that just letting it go. It is kind of, I don't know if I'm rambling now.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think people, when you're hurting, when you're suffering, you have the assumption that people are going to judge you.
Yeah.
And it's all going to be negative feedback. People are going to think you're attention seeking, like you thought it might have been, or they're just going to think negatively in general. But
yeah.
more often than not, when you open up, when you share and go through that emotional depth, people are going to commend you for being brave, because people want to be that brave themselves. They just haven't given themselves permission. So it's not until someone like you steps up to the plate like that and speaks openly and vulnerably that you, I guess, show them that it's okay to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. You've articulated what I meant to say. Yeah.
So at what point do you go and see the psychologist? Is it after that?
Well, working at this mental health youth service, there are counselling services and it's for young people. And I was only young, I was 20. I'm still young. And, I saw that from the start of the session to the end, and I could see how much progress they made. And in that time, when they came in, they were in such a... Sorry, I'm Aussie. When they'd come in that first session and seeing them so fragile, and then seeing them at the end of it after weeks, I just love that, knowing that they're helping themselves, and not just helping themselves but taking that first step. And I was like, why am I not doing this for myself? And yeah, I went and accessed a private, because I didn't want to do it at my work. Did a private session, and that psychologist I did gel with and I felt like it put me off a little bit. But then I got recommended, a different person, and she was lovely, and, I kind of started to unravel and unpack all this crap that I was suppressing so hard. Things to the point where, I remember stuff that my brother had said that it really had upset me. And I held on to it, and I had this, this anger towards him, but, it was like a niggly thing that I should have just dealt with.
Are you able to say what?
So moving away from my brother, I left in the middle of the night and I didn't say goodbye.
Oh, wow.
And that really, I know it really hurts him, and it hurt me, and I was holding on to that, and he always sort of he said to me once, I have an abandonment issues because of you.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, it's not because of me. I was 11. I had no, and I held on to that, and yeah, him and I joke about it now, we're like, oh, abandonment issues over here, but at that time, I remember unpacking all this stuff that I'd, held on to, things from what my dad had said to me, maybe not so much meaning, but stuff like that really was bringing me down, and not, and it was hard working in a mental health service, you're surrounded by it, and you have to talk about it, and you have to sort of promote people promote that it's okay to talk. Yeah. When I wasn't practicing what I was preaching. So that really, hit me. So I had to do it. I just had to bite the bullet and go. And it's hard. It's really hard.
It's confronting.
Yeah.
It's not too much harder than confronting your own flaws and all the trauma you've buried, because it's buried for a reason.
I agree. Yeah. So it's all coming to surface again. And I think over time it gets really, I now can fluently and happily, tell my story, because I see it as such a power. It's not, I know that the thing is that even though all this stuff happened to me, it doesn't identify who I really am.
Yep.
It was just circumstances, and your circumstances don't have to define your identity. And now when I introduce myself, I see myself as powerful. I don't see myself as that small broken little young girl, even though I cry about her sometimes. It's just because you kind of have to put yourself back to that dark time. Yeah.
So have you been able to, in your mind, grieve the loss of your mum and your grandma?
Yeah. I think my grandma had closure with at her funeral. I got to see her at the viewing, and I think there's a powerful thing with seeing the actual body.
Yeah.
I think you come from New Zealand back then?
Yeah, so we were the same. They stay overnight for 3 days or something with us.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful thing with culture, honestly, and I think I had closure with my nan, but I think my mum, there's always this question marks and this confusion still. The reasons what had happened to the lead up to that, but I think our whole family has had closure with that. She was in a very dark place prior to it, and we could accept that she made that decision, and unfortunately no one could have changed her mind. And I guess, it hurt having not known that for so long, but I think it was probably the best thing for me. I think I wasn't in that maturity space. I wouldn't even be able to process suicide at 11. And I think I could probably process it a little bit more at 18. And I think that's what comes, being an 18-year-old hormonal woman, going through some life changes. There's a whole range of feelings that come back, and one of them was resentment and anger. But I think I dealt with it. I think lots of therapy.
I think it definitely was the best thing for you to not know that, because one of my best friends through primary school, his mother took her life as well.
Yeah.
I took her life as well. And everyone knew she took her life, but any chance that anyone wanted to pick on him, it picking on him about his mum. And so, like, in a sense, yes, it sucked that you didn't get to know the truth, but I guess it safeguarded you from possibly being bullied with something like that, which would have been so much more traumatic in itself.
Yeah.
Have you forgiven your mum? Not that you had to. Have you forgiven her for leaving you?
Yeah, I think one of the actually weird things is that people have come into my life since my mum and Nan have passed. And one of them is like my pop, who actually used to look after my mum when she was younger.
Well.
And it's a powerful thing. Like, he's not blood related, but we just call him Pop. But and that's, that journey is another spiritual one and another crazy, how the universe happens or works out. But he even said that my mum was the most forgiving person, even though she had so many things happen to her, in a way. So I think my thing that I wanted to take of my mum and with me and carry with me was that level of like being able to forgive, but in a way that I don't hold any anger. I don't have energy for it, or I don't have to carry that. So forgiveness is huge. I think, that's probably one of my best qualities about my mum that I took on.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So moving on from there, I really want to talk about, I guess, you being, I'm not too sure, is Aboriginal okay to say?
Yeah. I identify myself as Aboriginal.
Yeah.
Like, some people are like, do I call you Indigenous or?
That's what I meant.
Like,
for me, coming over here, like obviously being Māori or being Indigenous back in New Zealand, like there's the same sort of negative stereotypes, but it's really amplified here.
Yeah.
How have you gone about navigating that? Has that been a problem at all? Like trying to fit in, especially coming from like being a country girl?
Yeah. Well, funny, I was always sort of growing up in a country town and being actually fairer than some of the other Aboriginal kids. I was called a half caste.
Yeah.
And that always kind of meant that you weren't Aboriginal, like you weren't Aboriginal enough. So I went through this whole identity thing where I didn't think that I was Aboriginal enough, and because I felt like an outcast with my white family, that I wasn't white enough either. So I always had this thing where like I didn't know where I fit in, whether I was Aboriginal, whether I was not, because my mum's also Malaysian background.
Oh, wow.
So, I didn't really grow up with that culture, but I was like, well, where do I fit in this? I was like, didn't know anything about the Malaysian culture. But I think I knew very well that I identified as Aboriginal, and that was my culture, and that was what I was really proud of. And I didn't find that power in culture until I was probably in high school, until I started reading about history, and it started to mirror my experiences at home. So sort of, that was the cat, Tommy. Poo. We'll cut that out.
No.
She's pretty, but she's stank. No. So I was always so used to being Aboriginal. Like, that's what I grew up with. That's what I was known. But I always got comments like, "Oh, you're too pretty to be Aboriginal." I got called, when people would find out that I was Aboriginal, they'd call me a bull. I'd got half caste pretty much my whole life. So all these names, I guess, and titles sort of made me feel really conflicted of who I was, because I wasn't any of those. I knew that I wasn't any of those. I knew that I was Aboriginal, and that's, I was proud. I actually used to call myself a Yamaji woman because I grew up in Yamaji country. But I didn't later find out that my grandmother was actually from Noongar country. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. And then I got really proud with being a Noongar, Yamaji. So it's been a journey. That's another aspect of my life, is finding my cultural identity and that journey has just been, I think, so fulfilling for me, because it kind of always makes me feel every piece is kind of making me who I am and restoring really who I am. And I think doing my TED talk, that was me kind of part of me restoring that, like kind of locking it in concrete, like telling the world that this is who I am and I'm proud to be that.
It's amazing. For me, I grew up like a city Māori, and there's like the rural ones, the ones we call them bush Māori. And so, like usually they're the ones brought up with the culture really well, they speak the language. And then if you're not from the bush, if you're a city Māori, it's sort of similar to you, like being outcast in a way.
Yeah.
Like you don't fit here, you're not really Māori. And so for me, instead of doing what you've done and like accept it, I shunned the culture entirely, like until recently. So how have you been, or how did you, I guess, give yourself permission to stand strong in that culture and like continuously identify?
Because I think no one could take it away from me. My mum, she was a Noongar woman really, from even though she had Malaysian blood, there wasn't a huge emphasis on that side, and she didn't really indulge in it anyway, so we always thought, we're Aboriginal. And my grandmother, this is probably where it kind of comes a bit more stronger with, because she was 6 foot tough woman. She would if you were going to get belted, you would get belted. Like, she wouldn't miss you. But, my nana was very proud about culture, and she would tell us stories, and I kind of wish that I listened a lot more. I feel now that I've missed out on so much. And it comes from her, because knowing that they can't take that away from me, that's who I am. And whoever question it, I think I just put it on them. Like, that's your own issues. If you want to question my cultural identity or my identity, then you have it. Like, you've got a problem. Go find yours. So, and that it's, again, been such a huge journey for me. But I think everything that I read, everything that... I think just my culture is so beautiful, and it's the same with the New Zealand culture. Like, I play rugby and I absolutely love everything, about other cultures. So I want people to know that mine's just as beautiful as how much I see other people's. And I think as much as there's so much trauma, intergenerational trauma, I feel like there's such a, still so much depth to it that can be really showcased. If that makes sense.
It is. Yeah. It's beautiful. It is. We've got about 15 minutes left.
Yeah.
But I really want to touch on your TEDx talk.
Yeah.
And their process leading into that, because, like we said beforehand, public speaking is like the number one fear.
Oh,
above
so
death. So, like, what was your experience leading into it and during it, and how do you feel about it now?
Yeah. One thing that's really hard for me is I still hold a little bit of self-doubt. And when I was asked to do the TEDx, I had that level of self-doubt. I was like, I can't do it. Why are you asking me? That's literally what I said to them. I was like, why are you asking me? And then I kind of questioned, was it because of my bachelor experience? Was it, because I'm I have this huge platform and they want to kind of like jump on that. I honestly was questioning so many things, and they had to sort of sit me down and tell me, like, we want you because, there are so many things that you can give, there's so many things you can give to people if you want. And it's not like, they will ask me to give, like, eternal wealth to all these people, but, so many messages that I could send across. And when they put it that way, I was like, okay, all right, cool. So the whole process was 10 weeks lead up to it. And that's pretty stressful because, I work full-time as well. So you have to kind of fit in this, writing the speech, drafting the speech, and there's drafts due every week. So you kind of had to submit a draft every week. And I can honestly say from my first draft to my final, it's the opposite. Like, the points that I were thinking about at the start were not points that I ended up with. And I think that's the whole crazy journey of it all, is that it's a really internal, and you know how we're talking about suppressing those suppressed feelings.
Yeah.
You really have to bring those suppressed feelings and memories and experiences to the surface. And that can be really emotional. It's like I cried the first couple of times that I had to read my speech. And then you have to say that whilst getting recorded and in front of 100 people. It's a very unique experience. I'm grateful for it, but man, it was hard. Like, yeah.
What about the nerves, I guess, about speaking in front of a crowd in general? Because for most people, that give them anxiety, make them shudder. Just being fully seen, and especially you sharing the story that you shared, like being fully seen, like being absolutely vulnerable and people seeing you, all your flaws and everything.
I preach that being vulnerable is powerful because I know through my own experiences. So in my mind, I was saying to myself, okay, being vulnerable, like, it's going to help people. It's going to be powerful. Your story is going to, it's going to prove to people that you're not just the girl from The Bachelor. You have so much depth and you have substance. And it was kind of like a proving thing. Like, I was proving myself. But I let go of that feeling because I didn't want to prove anything to them.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually more share and enlighten them on, that it's not easy. My life wasn't easy. Doing this TED Talk isn't easy. And the nerves really got to me, if I'm being honest. The night before, I was a wreck. Like, I cried. I couldn't physically get the words out without crying. And you freeze. You're in that moment of like, I don't even know what the next word of the sentence is. And it's a difficult process. But I honestly can't, it shocks me that I actually did it and got through it. But yeah, very internal process.
How did you feel while you were up there?
Afterwards, I felt fantastic. Like, I felt on top of the world. I still feel on top of the world from it. Like, the week after, I just felt so proud of myself that I had overcome that. It's one of the things that I've wanted to do for years. Like, I actually wrote it down because of Dr. Kat. She said, if you want to do this, write what you want in your life for 10 years or 5 years or however you want. And I wrote Tedx. And doing that, and now knowing that I've ticked it off, I've confronted a fear as well. I feel like I can go talk in front of 100 people now. Like, it doesn't, anything is so small or minute from that moment. It's a crazy feeling, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. Like, facing your fears, like, directly and, like, in front of, like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Do you feel like people overplay, I guess, public speaking and what they're going to receive when they do it? Because, like, going through, you'll know when you go through and you do your TEDx talk or you speak in front of a group of people, you have an assumption that it's going to be really hard, that people are going to judge you, etc., etc. And then when you go through it, you're like, why the hell was I scared of that?
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, that was one of my biggest fears going into it, is the fear of judgment. That people will just see me as one of the speakers, and I will say Brooke from The Bachelor, and people will be like, well, she's just a girl that, got this huge platform from being on a show. There was this fear of judgment. Like, they're not going to listen to me because they're just going to think that I'm this, and this. And no one had said that. Like, this is my whole mind process that, things that I'm saying to myself in the lead up of this. But the biggest thing was fear of judgment. And I still have to, I still care. I think that's the thing is I still care what other people think, even though I say that I don't. I still do.
Yeah, it's hard not to.
Yeah, you want to look your best at all times. You want to do your best at all times. But there is that hint of you, that self-doubt or that, imposter syndrome that you're like, you don't deserve this or you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you limited yourself to that? To Brooke on Bachelor?
Yeah, I was limiting myself to that, and the night before I was saying that physically out loud. I was like, I can't do this, and my partner was like, no, you are doing this. And anything that he said or did, it didn't beat that thing in my voice, that voice in my head saying you can't do this. And it wasn't until the next day when I could completely fully recite my speech with my hands behind my back, blindfolded, whatever, where I was like, I know this speech off by heart. I literally said to myself, I can do this. This is going to be a walk in the park. I can do this. And I went out stage, and yeah, there were moments where I had froze, but I recovered because I was myself. I think it's hard doing something that's not you, but if it's yourself and it's you can only be you. You can't be someone. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Got a couple questions and we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
Knowing everything that you've been through, which is a hell of a lot for, how old did you say, 24?
I'm 24, yeah.
24-year-old?
Yeah.
Shit.
I'm 25 soon, so I'm nearly quarter of a century.
So knowing that you've been through all that and you're still that young, what would you say the quality of your life is like now?
You know what? Quality, if we were putting it in a percentage,
If you want to.
I'd say 99.9% because I know that I can always improve. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a good answer.
I feel like I have, being so young, I've just, I have so much that I want to accomplish now, and so many more people that I want to help. I think that's my, I've found a purpose. Life is for me, it's not against me, and I think that's, everything that I do now is either you learn from it or you learn that you hate it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What have you added to your life or removed from it to improve the quality of it?
I removed toxic people, and I think that's a huge thing. We have this nature of keeping these friends that we feel because they've got this longevity, we've been friends with them 10 years or whatever. But if they're not bringing any joy or any love to your life, I feel like that should be a moment where you kind of readdress those things. So I removed toxic people. Unfortunately, that included my dad. And I think my life now has improved because I let go of those feelings of anger and hurt and, being dragged down. What I brought into my life, good people. Yeah, surrounding myself with good people. People that are kind of on my wavelength and, are happy to, communicate how they're feeling to me and, just so happy to be in my vicinity and me also being happy to be surrounded by them. Yeah.
That's awesome. What are you most grateful for right now?
Grateful? Oh, God, there's so many. I am so grateful in this moment, at this point of time. I'm grateful for living in Perth. I think I absolutely just love living. Yeah, I think Perth's got great weather. It's fantastic. Unless you want me to give you some question.
No, that's good. That's good. I'll go for that. I love Perth too. I love the people. I love the mental health community here.
I just love the vibe.
Yeah.
People say, we live in a bubble, but if you're in a good bubble, it's a really good. Perth's really good.
It's a chill city.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question. Do you feel good enough now?
Yeah, I would say. It probably looks like I don't say that with confidence, but I don't want to be like, I'm good.
Step into your power. What do you do?
I try to stay humble and modest. I don't want to approach that I'm modest, but, I know in myself that I'm good enough, and it was a bit of a long journey to loving yourself completely. But I would say that I love myself.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think you getting rid of toxic people, especially like people like your dad who are really close, shows that you feel like you're good enough.
Yeah.
Self-worth.
Agree.
Awesome. To wrap up, I want to acknowledge you first of all for making it here, for making time for this.
Thanks.
I know you're busy, you've got a lot of things on your plate, so I absolutely appreciate it. I appreciate you for being here, but most of all for being someone with your platform, with your experiences, taking that and sharing that on your platform. That's powerful, it's amazing, and you're just going to continue to positively impact people.
Oh, thank you. I actually loved it. Thank you for having me. Honestly, it means a lot that you even thought about me being on your podcast.
Yes. Thank you.
Leadership for Growth with Brendan Usher is specifically designed for middle managers and focuses on 3 key areas, those being people, vision, and self. Now, this is tailored to suit those middle managers, to turn you from that manager into a leader, to accelerate your career growth.